Here's a quick synopsis. So my name's Gloria Masters. I was born and bred in New Zealand into a family where sex trafficking was normal, and I'm talking generationally. So my father, his extended family, his friends, gangs and pedophile rings he belonged to were all complicit in my abuse. And he made so much money out of me that he imported one of the first 4 Pontiac cars into New Zealand in 1968.
So first of all, I'm just so inspired by you, and I'm so in awe of you, and it really is like such an honor that you're like. Just the other day, like I was cleaning my kitchen, and I just have like videos on Facebook just scrolling through, playing in the background. Yes. And I'm a single mom. I have 3 little kids. They're running around, whatever. And as long as they weren't in the room, because it was a heavy video, I didn't want them to hear it. I was listening to your video, and at some point I had to stop cleaning and just stare at the screen, and I started crying. And then I commented, like, I just want to give like her inner child a hug and go rescue her. And you pressed like on the comment, and I'm like, oh, she's a real human, like Jesus. So then I'm like, oh God, I gotta find this lady. And what I like on my podcast, it's not so much a matter of like, I don't write down any questions. I don't write down a script. It's very much like I naturally am drawn towards, okay, I'm naturally very curious to hear more about this person, and I want to give a voice to this person. And then I just like, I like for it to sound, rather than like a scripted interview, which it isn't, as a natural conversation that people feel like they're eavesdropping in on. Because it's always fun to eavesdrop in on someone's conversation, but it's much less fun when you're like, okay, they planned this or something, So that's what I personally find interesting, so that's why I do that. And I was thinking of sending you 2 of my songs beforehand, but I didn't want you to feel that I was like just doing it for like my songs or something. So I was like, you know what, I'll maybe just send her it afterwards or something. But for some reason, I make all these heavy songs. One of them is about preventing suicide, and one of them is about domestic violence. And they're pretty heavy songs, and they were used in like support groups. So I feel really like they had some type of purpose, not just, like making music just for fun. So I would be really curious to hear your, I wouldn't say professional opinion, but like from experience, and what's more professional than actually living something than just, talking about it and writing down rules. So I'm talking a lot, but you are the you are the guest of honor. So I want to just you don't have to give any whatever details you feel comfortable giving, but just I want people to know, whoever is listening, I want people to know, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, whatever, who am I talking to? I want you to introduce yourself. This is Gloria Masters. I believe you wrote a book called Handing the Shame Back. Am I right? No.
So
I'm wrong. Okay. Or its organization. Okay, I'll let you take the wheel.
So Rachel, do you like to be called Rachel or Rach or?
Sure, Rachel. Sure, yeah, Rachel. That works.
Well,
thank you.
Okay. Hey,
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, Rachel.
Thank you for having me on the show. So look, there's
absolutely
the YouTube channel I run is called Handing the Shame Back.
Okay.
And the foundation I run is called Handing the Shame Back.
Okay.
Because when survivors like you and I speak, we are handing the shame back. Every time we speak, we release it a bit more. Yeah? So that's why I call it that. The memoir is On Angel's Wings, My Flight from Trauma to Grace.
Okay. I'm going to put the link. You can send me the link.
Yeah, I know, but I know you asked me before, so I'm just letting you know. And that's a memoir, so that's not an easy read. It's the truth.
I can imagine.
It won't be.
That was not an easy watch. So if it's any more elaborated than I watched, yeah. I'm sure it's very triggering, but validating, probably.
100%. And then the real gift, I think, is the flight path. It's called Flight Path to Healing, a guide for child sexual abuse or for adult survivors of child sexual abuse. And it's a
Wow.
book I've written as a guide, and it's experiential. So you read a chapter, and then there's a page of exercises for you to do. So it's your story, you're working through your stuff. Then it's got a mantra with a beautiful image in it. So all through the book, you can pick the book up in any part, but I've really designed it for survivors like you and me.
So I don't want this to be about me, but I'll just brief you really, really, really brief. Don't forget what you're gonna say on me so that you're not giving me any type of honorary titles that I did not earn. I am I did make a song on domestic violence, but it's about a loved one. It's and friends that I have. It's not specifically about me in my specific situation. My husband at the time suddenly developed bipolar psychosis, just suddenly. That was a couple years ago, and he was in and out of psych wards and jail, and he's currently still locked up. And so for all intents and purposes, I'm a single mom for the past few years for my 3 kids. The reason that I feel like I don't get like I feel what is it called? When you don't belong in something syndrome, imposter syndrome with domestic violence, because even though sometimes things in psychosis can mimic a little bit of that, it wasn't who he is. Like, he's a good person or whatever, but I am very sensitive to like people in these type of situations because I do have loved ones in certain situations, and I feel very passionate towards the fact because there's such a broken system, and people are like many times perpetrators are being supported, and that really scares me. And I recently heard about how there's a lot of higher ups that have like underground systems that are trafficking people, and it really freaked me out. And when I saw your story, I realized like this is not just like people having conspiracy theories. Like, this is a real person, really genuinely, that went through like the unimaginable. And I think a lot of us tell ourselves maybe that it's not true because we don't want to believe it because it's too painful. And it's so important to know that it's happening and to believe that it's happening, because that's the only reason, that's the only way that we can combat it. And so it's so important that your bravery is so appreciated by, I'm sure, the world over, because, and you like, people need to hear you because they need to hear that it's really real. And like, when I was hearing your video, I really had the desire at some point to turn it off because I was like, it was too painful. But I was like, no, I need to like, she went through it. So who am I to be like, oh, I can't listen to it? You know, like I have to just put my feelings to the side and like allow myself to feel this pain with her. And I'm just happy that at least you're out of it. And the fact that you're doing something good with it is
Yeah.
so. You let me talk a lot, but really I want to hear what you have to say.
No, I think you raised some really valid points, and apologies for the misperception. I thought you were an adult survivor of child sexual abuse, so that's all I deal with. That's
okay.
all
I mean, listen, I think as women, I mean, I don't know, I can't speak for other people, I guess, but I've definitely had my fair share of like tiny little incidents here or there where people cross boundaries.
Child,
but exactly, but I don't get to, claim that category for myself. I don't.
Okay. Right. So look, I think you raised an interesting point, Rachel, and it's a really good one. So you're doing great. Just breathe. You're fine. And that's this, that people really struggle with truth like this because it means there's a part of our world or our society that where evil exists. And the reality is, we know from the United Nations at the end of last year, they released some stats. The biggest industry, the biggest $1 billion industry globally is human trafficking, including child sex trafficking. So people just need to be aware it's going on and it's not new. So for me, this was decades ago. Yeah. But I'm telling my story because I'm now healed enough to.
How did you end up so normal?
Oh, well, that's what I'm saying. It's decades. I've done decades of therapy and healing, because really I shouldn't be alive, and I'm so grateful that I am. But the point is that we all have, in our society, we have 4 key groups about this. We have the survivors, bless their little hearts, and there's up to 1 in 3 of us adult survivors of child sexual abuse across the world. We have
1 in 3 humans?
adults have experienced, I'm saying up to 1 in 3 adults have experienced some form of child sexual abuse. This is huge. The second group is the good people out there like you who hear about it and then are so impacted by it, which shows you're a good person, by the way, that it's actually really hard to get your head around it, and it's easier or less traumatic to not hear it.
We tend to want to believe that everyone is actually good. Like
100%.
they don't really mean it. That's not really who they are. And that's how people like that end up sometimes in domestic violence situations, because they defend their perpetrators. But I see what you're saying, that even if they don't end up in that situation, you want to you are likely to perceive other people as good. Maybe if you have good in yourself, or you're not capable of those things you think other people are not.
Yeah, but I'm not talking domestic violence, I'm talking child
Right.
sexual abuse. So
Right.
what I'm
Yeah, I'm
saying
sorry,
is
conflating the two.
that's okay, because that's all I can talk to is what I know.
Yeah.
But the reality is, when you hear it and you're a good person, you want to know about it. I'm using you as an example, Rachel. What happens is then the challenge becomes, what do I do with it? Because what's happened is we've become so desensitized to this now that it's expected that, oh yeah, girls will be abused, or that, as you said earlier, as an adult female, you'll get abused. But I don't want to leave out the beautiful male survivors among us, because they get abused pretty prolifically as well. Differences
Who?
speak about it, the men, the male
Oh.
survivors of this. So
And they're probably more ashamed to talk about it, even if there's a lesser number of them.
for them. It's too hard for them because doesn't suit the narrative. Men are meant to be strong, brave, protect the females and children, and be able to cope with anything. You know, so there's no permission in society for men to be small children and survivors of this sort of crime. But the other thing is, so we have the gatekeepers and enablers who know about this. So think Jeffrey Epstein. There's gatekeepers and enablers around all of this. Because
like, I don't know how to pronounce her name, like Ghislaine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Would that be an enabler then? Or, I mean, she's also a perpetrator.
She was also a perpetrator, but a good case in point, so is the driver, so are the staff. Because instead of reporting the crimes, I'm not saying they liked it, but they became complicit in it. And then you have the abusers, who of course never want to talk about it because they're making too much money, or they're getting too much gratification. So that's why society struggles with hearing this, and they'd rather call people like me a liar and a fantasist than accept that it's possible that this stuff goes on.
What is their what do they say you have to gain by making a lie? Like what would someone have to gain by being brave and saying a story that is not fun to talk about?
Look, I have no idea, but you'll notice that when people like me come forward, we're immediately, where's the proof? What bullshit? You know, yeah, she was always the difficult one. Oh, that's one way to get attention. So there's not an instant belief. That's shifting a bit more, I think. Like I've noticed we've had now nearly 3.5 million views of that across the world, which is fantastic for our survivors. Important.
Yeah.
Do you really want to know why I'm speaking out?
Yes, of course.
Because I really want to, I don't need the attention. I want to help other survivors.
Oh, I know that. I thought
Yes.
you were going to tell me some news or something. Oh,
No.
I know that. No, of course. I know
Yeah.
that's why. I'm just trying to figure out why someone would think that that's not why. Like I'm trying to wrap my head around it. Um
If you
wow,
were
that's
going
great.
to give me a few $1 million, yeah, I'll make shit up for you. But
That's honest.
you couldn't make this up. Good luck.
Right. Yeah, no. You can feel when someone is
Yeah.
um I actually I sometimes see these accounts of conspiracy theorists, and sometimes they're a little paranoid and they're a little crazy and they go over the edge. But there are some things I say, and they talk sometimes about how there are um people in, I don't know, the Illuminati, and they're in the and they're Freemasons and this and that, and they are in this hierarchy of people that are above other people, and it's kind of a pyramid scheme but of sorts, and it's some type of power, and they abuse the power and they get away with it because there's so many of them, and they have so much money and so much influence. And when you said your story, and you I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think you mentioned Freemasons or something like that, and I was like, wait, like here's someone from the inside that experienced the suffering and managed to survive it. And it made sense when you said so many didn't survive it, of why not only, like you said, some people are afraid to talk out because of the reactions that they get, and because of it's ingrained in them, they were abused. And then there's people that are told to shut up, and then there are people that didn't make it out of there, so many, like you said. So it makes sense that these things are going under the wraps, because also these same people probably have connections with media and whoever else to make sure that it doesn't gain enough publicity for something to actually happen and fix it. Because if I think that if something like if good people were really in charge of publicity and things like that, this would be wiped out, because it's the evil of the evil. Like, there's no way it can survive without someone having enough power to over, because it's against the law. There's no way they could get away with so much like that. It just doesn't even make sense.
Well,
So I'm curious to
look
hear
at
about the
Jeff.
power and how that
Yeah,
works.
but we've got a perfect example in the media, haven't we? Jeffrey Epstein. Now, that little black book that's been released, and Virginia Giuffre, what a hero she is, who's got the list of all those names. They're
And
not
they didn't
even,
release them,
they're still
right?
not being released because these are very powerful people, and they can pay whatever it takes to make sure that never gets exposed.
Do you
We,
know
we
some of
had
these people and they're still alive, and you know their names and you're like afraid to say them because they're still in power?
No, I wasn't in that ring. That was recent. That was 20 years ago. Mine goes
Mm-hmm.
back 45, 50 years ago. So yeah, no, but all I'm here to say is
Yeah.
that's a perfect case in point, because you notice this names still really aren't out there, and you need to check yourself. Rachel, why is that, do you think? It's
Yeah.
because it's being shut down. Why is it
Yeah.
being shut down? Because there's some big names.
So it proves the point that it's
Yes,
true
what you were
because you
saying.
can't hear about it. But it's so, again, it makes it even harder to wrap your head around. And
Yeah.
that's why, again, I want to bring a voice to it, because people are so quick to be like, it's so unbelievable that I can't believe it. But that's the
Fine,
thing, is
don't be.
because it's unbelievable, you need to hear what is unbelievable, and you need to get rid of this unbelievable thing, because it shouldn't be allowed to happen ever. Um and I want to know, like, what kind of advice you have for if let's say a parent has a situation where they're not sure, and they want to find out if something happened with their kid, right? And we're often told as parents that don't prompt your kid, because you can give them ideas and then they just repeat it back to you. Oh, that, yeah, that. So you try to vaguely hint and see if something comes up, or give them a game to do and see if it comes out, but it's not always going to happen, right? Kids don't always say something that happened, especially if it happened by the hands of someone they trust. They might feel loyal to that person, or they might think that they're just wrong for thinking something happened and just push it down, and it only comes out later. So what advice would you give as a parent to be the best? I know you, like, you put your kids in therapy, you be a safe space that they can come to, but like, let's say you really want to like ensure like, okay, nothing happened or something happened. What do you do besides just take them to therapy? And if it comes out or if it doesn't come out, like, is there like a magic word? Is there something, because you went through it, you know it as a child, what you needed to hear then that you did it.
Yeah,
So
it's another really good question. Thank you. It's really going to help people, bless. I think there's a couple
well,
of
I'm a mother, so it comes from a genuine desire to understand.
I know.
Yeah.
Look, I think there's a couple of things. One is, if something's going on, your child will probably not say, because children don't tend to talk. Children show us through their behavior and through their play. So if you notice behavior in your child changing, that can sometimes be a sign. The second thing is, if a child's being sexually abused, they may have been threatened or manipulated to keep silence, because that's what we do. We live in the shame and we keep the silence. But the child will have either been threatened or manipulated to never say anything. It's our secret. So here's a little tip for the parents watching. They weren't told they couldn't write it down, or that they couldn't do this, or that they couldn't do that.
Oh, interesting.
So all you have to do, if you suspect something...
For anyone listening and not watching, she nodded and shook her head.
Yeah.
Besides writing.
Yeah, thanks, Rach. So all you do is you have a little booklet like this. You put it in front of the child, and if the child is...
By the way, your book was blurry when you put it up. Was
it's just a blank little notebook.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
You just put it in front of the child and you ask the question, is something going on? And they can tick or they can put a cross. That's all they have to do. Then you go to the next question. So you can gently tease it out of them without them having to speak if they're too scared to speak.
Interesting.
And what I mean by that is, and then you might go through a list of names. So it might be, was there auntie, because we need to realize that up to 30% of abusers are women. There's a myth out there that it's all men. It's not.
30%?
Up to 30% of child sexual abuse perpetrators are women. It shouldn't be a shock.
That's a larger percent than I thought.
Yeah. So we've got to stop saying...
I thought you were going to say our family members or something, because I know that's true. I already knew that, but I didn't know 30% of women.
Yeah.
Wow.
Over 93% of abusers are known to the child.
Wow. So my question is, what happens when you come to a place where you give too much information to the child? And by that, I mean, when let's say you say to the child, like, did this specific person do something or whatever? When you prompt them, sometimes like they hear a prompt and their options are to say yes or no. So it's almost like, that person, okay, yeah, like obviously kids will say the truth and say whatever, but sometimes it confuses them. When you give them ideas, they're taking the ideas that you gave them instead of what already came from them.
Yeah, no, you're not, because, well, first of all, you're noticing their behavior. If their behavior is changing, it's signaling you. If you then follow up with, hey, do you feel safe at home? And they could go yes and nod their head or not really. Or it might be, do you feel safe at school? Do you feel safe at after school care? Like, you just start asking some very basic questions, and if they can't speak, they can write it down or they can give you a non-verbal response. But we never put suggestions in their head, like being
right. That's what I'm saying, is I would be afraid to suggest something and then
God, no. And you don't.
And then let's say that person was innocent and now the kid is like, why are you asking me about them? Should I be suspicious of that person when they actually felt safe with that person?
No.
I don't want to put any doubt.
You're already on high alert if your child's behavior has changed dramatically and you've realized something's going on. And they'll show you through their behavior, through their play. So, for instance, some children will put on lots and lots of shorts, underpants, clothes to try and protect themselves. other children will become very clingy and not want to leave the safe parent. Other children will just be out of control with their behavior, and you kind of start to need to think, I wonder what that behavior's about. And none of
my youngest, by the way, this is why I was worried about doing it at this time. I don't mind, but I feel bad for you. My youngest is, I hear him crying. He's about to come to me, but don't worry. I'll help him when he comes in the room.
That's fine.
I'm gonna continue the session. I'm a mom, so I'm not, it's not, when I say I never have time, so I always have time because
But look, I'm not an expert on any of that. I can only talk from my experience, so just be aware of that.
Well, your experience is extremely valuable because it's so extreme. I know. What happened?
He's asleep, man.
Come here.
So, Rachel, I suppose too, the thing is, thinking about this, you will know people in your life that are adults that that you may not even know that you do know. Does that make sense?
I lost the earphone. So sorry. Okay, there we go. I have you.
You may know adults that haven't even told you what's going on yet. So you may notice there are a lot of us out there is all I'm saying. But what else? At what point and what age did you start talking about it, and what was the catalyst? Well, I spoke to someone when I was 19. I spoke to a friend then. I spoke to a friend when it was in my 20s. But the full horror of my first 16 years didn't really hit me strongly till I was a parent, and then it all came flooding back here.
Wow.
That's not uncommon.
Is that typical for people to tell when they're...
It's typical for any of us. So for instance, if at the age of 10 your father died, when your first child turns 10, you're going to be struggling a bit.
Wow.
It's just a thing.
So why would you say in your life when you were 16, like you said, just because you started talking to one person and then it was a floodgate? It was open?
No. I told one person when I was 19. I told another couple of people in my 20s. But the big serious work on this started when I became a mother.
How many kids do you have?
2.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
You must be an amazing mother.
Look, jury's out on that.
You know what? If you weren't an amazing mother, you would probably be more overly confident. Like, yeah, I'm the best because it would be about you. But you're like, moms are always having mom guilt and questioning themselves. So that sounds pretty accurate to me.
I don't know. Look, I
haven't proven
I did the best with what I knew, and they're deeply loved and special, of course.
What I know is that when people go through things, there are different ways that, like, okay, so I'm taking psychology right now. I hope one day to get a major in psychology and work with people. And one thing I learned, and I think it can be inferred anyway, even if you haven't learned it. Okay, all done. You're good. One thing that can be learned. So cute. Sorry, I'm getting tired. Oh, one thing that can be learned is that sorry, I'm very ADD. Can you remind me what we were talking about? And it was important. I wanted to tell you. I'm just trying to get my train of thought.
Oh, you were talking about one thing that that can be.
Oh, okay. I remember.
When you're a parent, sorry about that. When you're a mom. Yeah.
So I realized that that when something happens to someone, it's their circumstance, right? It has nothing to do with who they are or what they are. It's what surrounded them and affected them. So that's nurture. And they might have had negative nurture. And I feel like, obviously, there's a certain degree to which it's still nurture, but I feel like the reaction to that, meaning once they get older, once they get therapy, and if they are able to heal and reach their potential of as a human, and there are different directions that they go. Some become perpetrators in turn, and in a way they were victims themselves. In another way, now they're a perpetrator. And then there are some people that actually go and try to rescue other people, as you're doing. And I feel like that speaks to the nature of the person as well, because you couldn't help what you went through. That was something that happened to you. But what you're doing with it, that you get credit for, because that's you. That's who you are. That's what you're doing.
Yeah, and look,
And
thank you for that. I think there's a couple of things. One is there's a myth out there that people that have been sexually abused go on to abuse their children. That's a myth.
really?
I've never sexually abused my children. The
Oh, of
males
course not.
survive. Yeah, but you see how you accept that from me as a woman. Accept it from the men as well. The men
Right.
who I interview and talk to on my show, who are beautiful survivors of child
Yeah.
sexual abuse.
Well, I would never assume that someone is going to do that if they went through it. I'm just saying, if someone was accused of it and then you find out that it happened in their childhood, and
Yeah,
they say that it's as a result, but I didn't know that that's a myth. That's very interesting.
it's a well. I have yet to meet a male survivor of child sexual abuse who has sexually abused children. So
Well,
that's,
probably
I'll
the people
stand by
that you
that.
come in contact with are not like sitting in jail or whatever. They're probably, I mean, I don't know, you tell me. They're probably more like coming and getting help, as they should be.
Well,
Um,
no, because that's another myth. Over 55% of people in prison have experienced some form of child sexual abuse. So again, this is huge. We got layers and layers of cost to our world globally.
I've said so many times that I want to work with inmates because of my kid's father that has been locked up for a while. And it was because he had psychosis, and then they didn't give him the right meds. So he was getting worse. And I would call and beg them to get him help. And instead of getting him help, they would lock him up. And
Yeah.
then when they would lock him up, they wouldn't give him his meds. And when they wouldn't give him his meds, things would escalate. And then he would get accused of things that would happen to him when he was in psychosis, because he wasn't given his meds. And then he was convicted or accused or whatever for that, and he was able to like plead insanity or whatever and be locked in a psych ward instead of in a jail. But he was in jail for 2 years, and even the psych ward, it's still locked up. And it's like, you neglected him, and now he's being punished for your neglect of him. Like, okay, he should have been on his meds in the first place or gotten help in the first place. But often someone that's not in their right mind, how they don't understand that they need to get help, and they're at the mercy of people that need to get them help and are not. So just, it bothered me that the system is so broken. And when I was telling the lady in the jail at some point, to the administrator, I said, like, please, he has mental illness, he really needs his meds, he really needs whatever. And she laughed at me and she said, huh, you think you're unique? Like 90% of the prison system has mental health issues. And I'm thinking, is that not something to be so embarrassed about? Like, why are they not in the hospital? Why are they not getting help? Why do we? And I know that the jail system is a for-profit system, that it basically benefits the bureaucrats or whatever. And at the end of the day, it breaks apart families. You have in the next generation of children that are fatherless because of it, and then they're more likely to commit crime and contribute to the prison system, and on and on and on. And obviously, like, and I think in places like Finland and places like that, they've proven that having a different type of system that focuses on rehabilitation, obviously you have to know, like, per the individual, but that focuses on seeing how you can fix the person rather than breaking them down further, treating them like an animal and then expecting them not to, lash out, locking them in a cage and expecting them not to try to break out of it. Like, we're human beings. We need air to breathe, food to eat, and we need therapy, and then we can be the best that we can be. And some people are beyond help, but you have to try to help people, I think, if you want to expect anything from them. And if you're actually genuinely trying to fix society. I would say that anyone who put you through what you went through, though, I don't have as much empathy for. I feel really angry about that. Like, it makes me like physically sick to think about. So that's why I say it depends on the individual. But even someone that has done something horrible, if it comes from a place of mental illness, whether they should be locked up or not because they're unsafe to be with society is one thing, but to not take care of the real issue, which is inside their brain, and actually fix it, you're not helping those victims by not making them a more safe person.
I think I hear what you're saying, and I think, 100%. And what I think we need to realize, and again, it's the same with my life and what's happened to me, Rachel, this is not new. This has been going on since time began. Anyone who was mentally unwell or unbalanced was locked away usually, and whether it was in a prison or in a mental health institution or in,
Right. And
they used
psych
to
wards were
call
not
a
humane at all.
madhouse or whatever they used to call
Yeah.
them these days. So there is no permission in for society. Society will always want to sweep it under the rug or have it hidden from view because it doesn't suit the narrative. And so where we have a diverse range of people, what we have is the world doesn't want to accept all of the diversity, and I think that's sad because we're all human.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What kind of diversity would you say needs to be accepted in this realm? Like in
Just
this
what you're talking
category?
about, people with mental health issues, people who, we look at Vietnam vets and we know they've suffered greatly from PTSD.
PTSD. Yeah.
But to be honest, the biggest group of PTSD sufferers are survivors like me. The difference is,
that makes sense.
the difference, over 70% of PTSD sufferers are survivors of child sexual abuse. Think about that, over 70%.
That makes total sense.
So the difference between the Vietnam vets or the war vets and us, they get awarded medals, they get put on platforms, they get benefits for life, they are seen as heroes, they parade around the country talking about this, and they were trained for the combat. Spot the difference?
That they chose to be a soldier, but
no, what I'm trying to say is those 6 key differences. Survivors, we try and speak, shut up, go away, get back into your box, we don't want to hear it. We're not applauded, we're not encouraged, we don't get given benefits, we are not awarded anything. People want us to go away, and that's why you'll see our prisons and rehabs and whatever full of survivors. So yeah, it's an endemic.
Oh,
that's
wow.
what I'm trying to say.
Wow. Okay. Oh, wow. Well, that's really important for me to know, because if I would ever want to work with inmates or anything of that sort one day and be able to piece out what's coming from what, it's important to know that so many of them are survivors, because I didn't know that. And I always felt like if someone is giving pain, they must have been given pain themselves. And that's what they know. Depending on who and what, obviously there are, as in your case, extremely animalistic behaviors that I just can't put a frame on it. But in so many cases, like, wouldn't it be nice if we could fix people rather than just break them further?
Yeah. So look, there's a huge need out there for understanding and education around this, and I don't believe it's there, but partly it's not there because of what we talked about initially, which is appetite to hear this stuff. There is no real appetite. I call this the huge numbers of survivors of child sexual abuse, the adult survivors. I call this the silent endemic. I've given you the numbers, and the silence is deafening.
So the people that are creating the statistics of the numbers, those people are able to announce the numbers. So where, like, I know that there's a lot of censorship in places of power. So how is it that we have this discrepancy where there's like good cop, bad cop, there's like people that are genuinely trying to crack down on it, and they're really, vicious about it. Like, oh, we got to get these people, we got to figure it out. We got to, expose it for what it is. And they are in power. And then you have some people in power that are not. So how are they working side by side? Is it just that it's not that everyone in the system is bad? It's just that, like, there are people that are bad and they get away with it because there's too many of them and they have too much power.
In every group,
right, there's bad
globally, you'll know it yourself. In every group of mums, there's going to be amazing mums, there's going to be good enough mums, and there's going to be dreadful mums.
Yeah.
So just think of across all of society, we've always got good and we've always got not so good. So I don't think we can say every every political party or every police department is corrupt. I think what we need to realize is there are some excellent people within each of these systems, and there are people who are abusers. So
Right, that's true. By the way, I was thinking that I know I told you I don't want you to feel uncomfortable to say details, and I stand by that. I was just thinking in my head, like I realized that we didn't really expand on anything, and we don't have to. I was just thinking that maybe if someone is listening to this and they're not realizing, like they're probably thinking like, well, what are you talking about? And obviously I can just put a link to the video that you did or whatever, and they can watch it there. And so, but I just wanted to like ask to make sure if you had any details that you feel comfortable sharing. I think that if only if you felt comfortable sharing, I think that people would benefit too, because I think it would keep their attention for the purpose of wanting to hear all of the productivity and purpose that you have and where it came from, basically. And because that's what drew me in, is how harsh the things are that you went through. It made me feel this, oh my God, I have to do something about this because of how horrible it was. So I almost want people to have that same shared experience as me and to understand like why this shook me up so much. So is there anything, and if not, again, don't worry, is there anything that you feel like you could share that would give people?
I can't hear you. Can't hear you.
Oh, can't hear me?
Now I can.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
that would
I'm
give
happy to
people
give a quick synopsis, and maybe you could edit this video and take this
that
next bit and put it at the beginning. So,
okay.
and then they know, because otherwise, why would they listen to me? Who am I?
No,
because they won't know the context. So it's a good point.
I hear you, but
Okay.
you're not obligated. It is.
Yeah, here's
worth hearing, I think. Yeah.
Here's a quick synopsis. So my name's Gloria Masters. I was born and bred in New Zealand into a family where sex trafficking was normal, and I'm talking generationally. So my father, his extended family, his friends, gangs and pedophile rings he belonged to were all complicit in my abuse. And he made so much money out of me that he imported one of the first 4 Pontiac cars into New Zealand in 1968.
Oh my God.
The abuse started from the age of 4, and although I was being groomed prior to that,
I have a 4-year-old.
As a little one, a little one. I'm even talking before that. But and then up to the age of 16 when I could finally leave. But we're talking forced abortions on me. We're talking being leased out of a nightclub. We're talking about, I'm not going to say pornographic because it sounds acceptable. Child exploitation movies. I'm in over
because it was done to you.
Those,
it wasn't done with you. It was done to you.
Well, I'm a child.
That's what I'm saying. Like when you say the word pornography, it has a connotation of like people being seductive or something, and that wasn't.
No,
that was something that was, but anyway, we know now that, I mean, I think people should have always known that that industry is rife with this type of crime. I mean, how could it not be a hotbed for that?
Yeah.
It's disgusting in the first place, and it's probably hard to, find people that are very moral that are doing these type of things, even though this is, a far cry from just immoral. This is way worse.
And look, I think, and the other thing too, of course, is that I, as a young child between 11 and 12 and a half, I tried to take my own life 3 times. I also tried to run away, ran away many times from my father, but I was always taken back to him. So
That part really, really, really bothered me. Like when you were saying about your school, like didn't get the cries for help, that bothered me even more, because it's one thing to, like, bad people will do bad things, but then if good people don't stop it,
yeah.
that's where we have an issue, because it's incumbent upon them. They're capable of stopping it. How could they have missed it? How could they have not seen it? And if they did see it, shame on them. Really.
Well, yeah, although to be fair,
In those days they weren't aware.
no one looked for anything like that. No one even considered anything like that was possible. All they saw was an out of control, really naughty prepubescent girl acting out. That's all they saw. So although they wondered what was going on, there was no way my parents were ever going to speak, and there was no way I was going to say anything, because I wasn't safe. I couldn't trust anybody. You have to realise, Rachel, there was no adult I could turn to. The police were involved in parts of it. I'm not saying all police, but the police were, doctors were, like, there's
The police were involved in not arresting them, like specifically on purpose.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Like they
saying.
knew what was
This is everywhere. This is everywhere. So I couldn't trust the police.
Wow.
So, you'll see comments about, why didn't she go to the police? Because I didn't know who I could trust within the police. There was no capability. But the whole point is, I got through all of that. Now, many, 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 many years later, I can talk about it. I've written a book about it. I've also started a charity called Handing the Shame Back, which is designed for our beautiful survivors watching, so that they have some resource and support for them as they try and manage the nightmare recovery from child sexual abuse is. And I also run a YouTube channel of the same name. So that's me. But
Wow.
So we've got
Wait,
the intro.
Yeah, yeah. What I don't want to keep you too long, because I'm sure you have
Yeah, no, I'll
you
have
have
to
a
go
full.
shortly, but carry
Yeah,
on.
okay,
Yeah.
okay. You'll tell me. You'll tell me.
Yeah.
I gotta go.
Probably 5 minutes, and then I've got my
Okay,
next
okay,
meeting. Yeah.
okay, sure. I wanted to ask you, like, I know that like we have studies and statistics that like on paper, but I want to hear from you with experience. And especially since you've also helped other people already under your belt. When you look, we know that children act out their trauma through play and things like that, as opposed to saying it outright. But then you have teenagers that are also sometimes not saying it outright and they're acting out, like you said. What type of things can people look for in someone that is a teenager or an adult that might be a huge issue? Let's say, I don't know, anorexia or something, that needs that question needs to be explored further, because I mean, I know there's such a wide range of things that can be attributed to it, but like what are your first pointers of, like, okay, that's a red flag that you wouldn't think is connected, but it is?
Well, it might be, is the thing. We don't know until we know. But I think a really key question is, what's happened to you?
Just simple, point blank.
What's happened to you? Or what isn't happening in your life? What's missing in your life? Because the thing is, children and teenagers just get labelled. He's the troublemaker. She's out of control. He's into drugs. She's always drinking or running away from home. We need to stop judging and start asking, what's happened? What has happened?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that would be the biggest gift I could give you today, is what's happened.
And the last thing, I really want your sage advice. For children, what would you say? Because I know that there's a difference between children have like things that they naturally explore, even if they're a little bit inappropriate, and then you as an adult have to guide them back into like, okay, that's not appropriate, don't cross that line. But when do we know when that is an indicator of more than that, or when it's just normal explorative play? Like sometimes they play doctor and they're like, pick up your shirt or something, and you're
That's
like,
all quite
no,
normal.
don't pick
Yeah.
up your friend's shirt.
Yeah.
But when do we
That-
know?
Yeah, that's all quite normal. I think when children start to hit pubescence, that's when some of that. But I don't want to give advice on this because I'm not an expert. But all I could say is do some research around the age appropriate sexualized behavior children shows. There is research on it out there, I'm sure.
Okay.
I just don't want to put anyone wrong, Rachel, and I don't know.
Well, that is the sign of humility, and also the more you know, the more you realize you don't know. So it probably means you know a lot. You already realize, okay, this I don't know, because you know what you know, and you've explored that. Oh, there's a corner that you might not know, but I think you probably do know more than most of us, because again, I think experience is the best teacher. I really do. Thank you so much. I don't want to take up any more of your time. Thank you so much. I want to send you my song on like suicide, domestic violence. I feel like that would be really meaningful to hear your specific feedback, and maybe if you have any victims you can share it with, that to help them. I would love to hear that it's helping someone. So thank you so much for your time. Keep on doing what you're doing. You're such a special soul. It like radiates from you, really. And I want to go back and and I'm so happy I can tell you this in person. Like, I want to go back and take that little girl and like whisk her away and run away with her and just hug her and be like, I'm saving you. You're with me now. I'm not going to let those bad boys in anymore, and just like save you forever. Like, and I'm happy that like you were able to rescue yourself. So you're such an inspiration. And it's not okay that you ever went through that. So thank you for the honor. God bless you.
And keep up the great work you're doing. And let me know if this recording doesn't come.
Yeah, it better have.
Just let me know, and I'll send it straight.
Okay, and I'll ask you to send me your recording if mine, I don't know, had some hiccups.
100%.
Okay, thank you so much.